So this the title of this today, I don't know if it has a title, but it's about community. And there's been a lot kind of happening in the world that has really highlighted the struggles humanity is having based around the idea or the understanding of community and what community is really about. And when we talk about division, racism, politics, religion, these are all very sensitive topics. Um, Community is at the core of all of these things. And it seems to me that the core of just being human is the fact that we have a true desire for connection. And so we end up forming some version of community, um, whether we want to or not. And it's not even a or not. It's just that we just want to. That's just how we are. So community, it is made up of two words, common and unity. Common is a circa 1300 is of circa 1300 origin. It's an adjective meaning belonging to all, owned or used jointly, general, of a public nature or character, free, open, public, not specific, familiar, not pretentious. Okay, unity is a noun, also from circa 1300. It means a state or property of being one. From Anglo French and Old French, meaning uniqueness or oneness, and then from circa 1200 Latin, oneness, sameness, agreement, or one. So, community then. A number of people associated together by the fact of residence in the same locality. Community, commonness, everybody, common, public, general, shared by all or many. So, community involves a number of people. They are part of a unit, but they do not, obviously, people do not look the same. They don't think the same. They don't have the same skills. A community is one body, and each part of the body has a unique way of expressing itself. And this is how a healthy body functions. Literally, a physical body functions because all of these parts do their individual jobs, right? Each part has something to do, and that's what creates a healthy, functioning body. And this is how a community or a body of people makes progress and accomplishes goals. A body that is not diverse is a community that cannot thrive. If the parts of a body do not work together, it cannot survive. The body is a diverse unit. The community is a diverse unit. So, the next part of this idea of community is unity in diversity. Unity in diversity. What is unity in diversity? It is our existence. It is life. It is the fact that the forest is a variety of plants and a variety of creatures, yet is one ecosystem working together and thriving. And notice that if humans weren't in the picture, um, the uh, the the forest would be totally fine on its own, right? It would have its own way of taking care of itself. And even, we've seen um, fires and things like that here. Even that's a natural part of the ecosystem, how it can thrive on its own and has its some kind of way, right? There's certain possibilities that are available, which help the ecosystem do what it needs to do to continue on. Unity and diversity, it's the fact that each of us is experiencing this one moment here and now, and this moment is now, and it is one moment and one experience. And though there are many perspectives here, there's one reality, and not one of us is seeing that reality objectively. Another way of saying that is there are many characters sitting here participating in one movie. So I don't see this situation from your perspective because I'm literally not there at your perspective. I'm not having your experience. Unity and diversity, it is life. It is the universe, unity in diversity. In its infinite diversity, it is still one thing. It is one experience that we are all within, that we are all part of, we are all one with. Unity in diversity is why we are here. It is the thing we are here to realize, become thoroughly acquainted with, and intimately know in practice, meaning not just some philosophical, psychological concept or idea, but it is the thing we are living out. And if we can become acquainted with that and in an intimate way be able to handle it and touch it and recognize it and perhaps dissect it, then we're in the practice. Instead of life happening to us, we become a creative part of it. Unity in diversity is the ultimate reality. I'll say that again. Unity in diversity is the ultimate reality. It is the thing that is happening that I am experiencing. And though I may think I'm being objective about it, that's a very difficult thing for me to do, for any of us to do. There's a very old term, older than we know, thousands of years old, that today in English we translate as God. This ancient word is more accurately translated as unity in diversity, the ultimate reality in which we exist, we breathe, we have our being, our I amness, our consciousness, self awareness, unity in diversity. It's happening here, right now. It is never not happening. So here we are then, experiencing this one moment here and now. And we've said this moment is here. It is one, right? Here then, in this moment, you hold one perspective of many perspectives. And you and I are not seeing things objectively. You are not seeing reality as it is. We are seeing through the lens of our personal imagination and our personal information, right? Whatever data I've collected over the years creates the lens by which I'm seeing you, which is not fair to you, actually, right? That I bring this data, but I don't actually know you, but I'm looking at you thinking I know you. So there goes, right? Like, how do I remove the lens, the subjective approach that I have to all of this that's happening? That means whatever we think is happening here is a projection of our own mindset. So then, we are each responsible for what we are seeing and thinking and interpreting here at this very moment. The world you are seeing is not the only experience happening right now. The story you are creating about all of this, about me and yourself and the other person and those people, is an incomplete story. And really, there's no one to blame. Ego is the problem. The ego is that version of you that is sometimes negative and sometimes afraid and sometimes agitated. It loves to imagine enemies. But your ego, is your true enemy. There's only one, one true enemy, and that's the ego. There's one sky, but billions of perspectives of it from all over the world. Have you ever thought that as the clouds like move around and pass by, your perspective, the place you are standing, no one else can see that perspective but you from right there and in that moment. So you may, like, if you were to, I don't know, um, to be talking to someone in that moment and say, "Hey, do you see the cloud that looks like a duck riding a bicycle?" They don't see that, right? Because they're not standing with the viewpoint that you have. There's one ocean, but that is the one reality and substance called water. But there are an innumerable number of drops. You and I would dare to think that we, just one of so many perspectives, one of so many drops in the ocean, we would dare to think that we know all of this. And that's the ego. That is the truth we've been blinded from for most of our lives. It is the problem in every problem we think we see. My ego is the problem in every problem I think I see. Mm. Your ego is the problem in every problem you think you see. So, community requires that we mature in self awareness, knowing that every problem begins and ends with me, specifically the ego in you and me. When I'm upset with anyone, if I find myself saying, I just don't understand how so and so could, listen to those words, I don't understand. The confession, the reality, the truth is right there. The problem is, I don't understand. And that's no one's problem but my own. And I have to accept that fact with humility and properly seek the answer to the thing I'm saying I don't understand. You see, at first when I said I don't understand how, my ego was speaking. But now as I say, I don't understand how, my true self speaks. My true self is the one who knows there is information I'm lacking in a perspective I'm holding, which is keeping me from understanding. And that instantly resolves my negativity. So then my stress levels, my state of mind, and my body can just tone down and find that healthy zone again. If I ask, why do you think the way you do? Why do you feel the way you do? Why do you choose the way you do? Could you answer honestly, efficiently, and precisely? If I were to ask, who are you and why are you here? Not just meaning in this space and in this moment, but on this planet. Could you answer honestly, efficiently, and precisely? This is the kind of curiosity that community needs. I need that for myself first and then for the community second. If I don't understand, if you don't understand why you do what you do or who you are and why you're here and how you could even dare to, how could you then dare to assume why I do what I do and what I should be doing? The ego is how you might make those assumptions. Hey, take note of every negative thought that comes into your mind. Notice how you begin to narrate around that thought, creating a story. There's a problem, there's an enemy, and your perfect solution. Watch how the negativity festers. You are no longer in control, but the emotion has control over you. The story is an illusion in the mind, and that's how the ego works. The problem is within you, but we've all allowed the ego to convince us of the same lie over and over again, that the problem is always someone or something else. It's never me. We attempt to make sense of things we do not understand, and then we delude ourselves into believing our own illusion, the story that we've created. And this is how we cope with our lack of knowledge. We lack the maturity to just say, I don't know why this or that is happening. I don't understand why that person is choosing what they are choosing, but I choose to bring a positive presence and energy to the situation and better understand myself through it. But the ego is not mature. The ego is not humble. The ego doesn't hold space for deeper understanding. So the ego, the not self, it's not the true version of me. It's not the true version of you versus the true self or the true identity. The answer to which, or the questions are, who are you? Who am I? Who are we? Why are you here? Why am I here? Why are we here? How can we find our way on this journey if we don't know the mission? If we don't understand our purpose? How can we even start in the right direction if we don't know what our purpose is? How can we accurately navigate the challenges of our lives if we don't have the answers to these questions? Who am I? Why am I here? And this is where proper decision making begins. If I want to form a community, if I really choose to form a community, there must be something within me going, there must be something within me that feels an intention, right? There's an intentional reason why the community is important to me. And I need to be able to say what that is. I need to be able to describe that. This is why businesses and organizations have purpose statements and, values, and there's something really valuable to that. The problem is humans get involved in organizations, and so organizations don't end up bringing about the results that they set out to. But what if the very humans who wrote the mission statement for that organization first had their own mission statement to make sure they were forming the right organization in the first place? We waste a lot of energy attempting to be who we are not and doing what we don't really need to be doing. And then we wonder why we're unhappy and why it seems that something's missing and why others don't seem to be doing what we think they should be doing. And again, that's where the ego begins to whisper in the ear, making up stories rather than taking responsibility. We must learn to see diversity as a series of pathways to our destination rather than obstacles, right? If something suddenly appears that I didn't expect and it's different than I might want it to be, that's a diverse thing, right? It's different. Instead of having a problem and seeing an obstacle, I might see an opportunity for development rather than something to be avoided. We must learn to pay attention to the cues and clues of life, and our emotions are like really good cues and clues. emotions like what genuinely makes us happy and what brings inner peace. If we even know what the true experience of inner peace is, that's another question for another day. Have you experienced inner peace? Do you really know what it is? Or is it just another thing that's in a moment because, I don't know, a chocolate chip cookie's there, so I have inner peace now, right? Like we attach ourselves to these things, but that may not be the real experience that we're seeking and asking for that actually lasts. Cookies don't last too long when I'm around, that's for sure. Um, why do certain things frustrate us? This is looking within instead of blaming, finding someone to point at. You can see that all in the news and politics right now, right? The blame game is ego work on overtime all day long. It's horrible. Since COVID kind of started up, there's been this statement going out around a lot. We're all in this together. But what is this exactly? I want to say that this is life. Unity in diversity. That's the one thing that we're truly all in this together. This one experience. It's seamlessly moving forward with innumerable variety. And all that variety is actually in cooperation with each breath and with each thought. And if anything's wrong with any of that, it's just the ego again. It's just me. Our diversity is beautiful, and beauty is what reveals love. That love is the core of all of this. Don't allow your ego to cause you to lose touch with that. Diversity is actually beauty. We should see diversity as opportunity rather than obstacle. Ego is not the true you. The true you, your true identity, is greater than every suggestion the ego makes. And I guess I would try to break that down by saying this idea of awareness and consciousness. I call it an idea, but it is the ultimate reality. um, just to sit and be aware of something that exists means you are greater than the thing that you're observing. So if we can acknowledge that ego comes in with these thoughts and they feel negative and all this other stuff, you are the one observing the experience. So you are greater than the thought. You're greater than the feeling. That is not the true you. But sometimes we take it on and we begin to wear that costume as if it's us. Ego is controlling and fearful. You guys can get out of the rain if you want. I didn't realize you're over here. I'm kind of in it too.
I'm okay for now.
I like being damp.
Nice. Okay. He likes being damp.
I just showered, so
You just showered. Okay.
you know, hair's still wet.
I'm in my shower right now.
Ego is controlling and fearful, but the true you is freedom and peace. Ego is controlling and fearful. The true you is freedom and peace, made for community. And community is unity in diversity. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, problems? And when I say problems, I mean you can be as honest and vulnerable about problems as you want to be right now. Um, Yeah, come on up, Marshall.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marshall. I was going to mention I really appreciate the questions that you had asked, and they were, who are we and what are we here for? I never actually pondered the first part of that question ever until you posed it. I would say for sure that I know that I'm here to serve, and that's all I do all the time. Feed off of that for sure, and I love doing it. But who am I? That's a good one. I'll be thinking about that for a really long time.
Okay.
So I just figured I'd bring that up.
Right on. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Lance.
I'm gonna raise this up for you.
No, this is super quick.
Is it okay? Here, I'm gonna put you in the
Sure.
a little bit more too. There we go.
So this is a kind of a thoughtful question
Mm-hmm.
that I've faced while talking to a lot of people, just in my life and around my life, which is, what do you say when someone tells you that they like who they are when they're immersed in their ego more than their true self? When they have adopted the mask and enjoy the mask more than it's really there. So, just any of your thoughts on that?
What do you say when someone is so immersed in their ego and they're wearing the mask, they've adopted that costume, so to speak, and they're saying they enjoy themselves? Is that what how you
They
said
like
it?
themselves better.
They like themselves
that.
better as that. So does that mean they are acknowledging that they're not being their true self then, or are they just
Yeah.
or yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Have you actually experienced that? Someone said this to you?
More than once, yes.
Hmm. It seems to me like my ego would want to address their ego. And here begins the problem. My ego wants to say, I don't know what my ego would want to say. My ego wants to prove that they are not okay, that they're not right, and that they need to change or fix something. And how are they going to respond to that? Just more ego, right? Like the war begins. Welcome to world history in a nutshell. I probably, my true self, I hope I would just let them be, because I need to be the example in that moment. And if I resist what they're saying or push back, then the example of the true self is no longer there. The pushback is my ego. Just because we think we know an answer doesn't mean the answer always needs to be given. That's a tricky one. Ugh. It makes me it makes me shiver like that, just because it's such a thin line, you know. It's like, just because you know something doesn't always mean it's the right time and place to say what you know. Yeah.
Well, my question is, what is the purpose of ego? I mean, what would it look like without ego? I'm not so certain that that that's an entirely good thing. I mean, I don't, that's a different thing to think I'm at my best when I'm at my ego. But
Mm-hmm.
what would it look like if we had no egos? And why do we have them?
Oh, wow.
Hard hitters today.
Let me first just remove any, do my best to remove this stool that I'm sitting on, which may give me some type of pretentiousness that I have some answers. Okay. I'll start with the why do we have ego, and then I'll have to ask what was part 2 to that question. In a world with so much diversity, ego actually does have a purpose that serves us well, and it is to survive. It is the thing that says, I need to exist, and I need to I think that's enough. I need to exist. Let's just leave it at that. In our modern way of existing, driving, going to work, it's not like after the sun goes down, we're actually in danger of something in nature coming to kill us or harm us. But that would be the original design for the ego, or purpose of the ego. It is an awareness that says, I'm in danger. I must survive. So now then, what does the ego have to do except look around at each one of you from my perspective and go, am I in danger? What are you thinking about me? What are you going to say to me next? So now I'm surrounded by all these fake enemies, because that's just what my very comfortable Western capitalistic society like offers my ego to deal with now. I'm not saying that there was a time when no human looked at another human and thought they had an issue. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's nothing else. The chances of me dying in my car are definitely higher than one of you killing me. But I don't get into my car and even think about that. I'm more concerned with what you're thinking about me than anything else. It's ridiculous. Also, this is, I guess, a part B to that question. Our ability to
Would you say that it's accurate that the perception of the ego is the perception of this world? It's a worldly view.
The perception of the ego is the perception of the world. It's a worldly view. Is that accurate? From each person's perspective, yes, that is highly accurate. But remember, our perspective is not the reality. I don't know if you heard that part of the talk earlier, but that's our very subjective experience, and therefore not the whole truth, right? I think that's all I can say to that first question about why the ego. Is it? I forget the part of the brain where that survival mechanism is. Amygdala. Let's just say that the ego and the amygdala, they some kind of way are very, very connected. It's that fight, flight, or freeze, right? Mm-hmm.
So I got a question. So it sounds like, if I understand what you're saying correctly, is that the ego is sort of what's formed as we go along through life from childhood on, experiencing things, and that creates a perception of the world, which is kind of like the ego piece.
Yes. Would you mind? I love what you just said, but I can't repeat it. Can you come and use this? And
I don't know. I can try, but once my mouth opens, my brain doesn't work that well.
so, if you want to try, that's great. You don't have to though.
If you want to take a shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think she just said that or this is not verbatim. So I'm going to try to reframe it. From this tall, as very, very young people, we're conditioned as we grow and experience, and that those experiences condition the way we see and kind of give us the perspective that we hold of ourselves and the world around us.
And that's
that-
what ego is.
That's ego,
Okay.
yes.
That's what I was hoping.
Mm-hmm. Also, we've seen ego in really tiny humans also. So conditioning definitely plays a role, but we've seen the young ones who are still in diapers, right, argue over whatever the other one has. So the ego is present. There's something primal about that. That's just within us. What happens is we don't have the adults to make that more clear to us as we're growing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I just had a thought that maybe if you don't have ego, you don't have the diversity, and so the beauty and unity isn't there. I mean, that you need some diversity, and but you want to keep it under control.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I like that thought.
Thank you for saying that. Now I'm just going to pause and think for a second. Is that okay? It's going to be longer than a second, actually. Okay, here it is. The true self has the power of differentiation, the ability to experience the diversity and recognize it and to enjoy it without being attached to it. That's the true self, free of attachment. Ego is the part of the human psyche that wants to attach. So the attachment doesn't allow the thing that you're observing to simply be beautiful anymore. Because to attach means to cling, to think you need, to think you must control. Now the thing is no longer beautiful. It's something to be manipulated. It's something to take from others. this rules our world. It rules our human experience. The way we approach each other, relationships, jobs, every material thing is something to own and control and to ensure that we can keep forever. And so we're attached. But we know the things that we're reaching and the people we're trying to hang on to, if we're honest with ourselves, we know we can't just hang on to them. We can't lock them into some confinement where they can just be there with us the way we want them to be always. That's not the reality of things. But we've really convinced ourselves of kind of living in this way. And since we're all in agreement, it works. That's the thing. My ego is agreeing with your ego. That, sorry to say this, but two egos agree to marry. And there's the attachment, the control, which is a lot of times based in some sort of fear that I'll lose you. So here's a ring. I don't want to lose you. That's the ego. I have nothing against marriage. I was once a married person. That is not why I'm saying what I'm saying. We're just purely talking about the nature of the ego, the reality of attachment, why we make the decisions we make. And again, in our lack of identity, we really are afraid of losing things that we are not honest enough to just say we never had control over in the first place and ultimately never will have control of.
So, unconditional love can therefore only come from the egoless self.
That seems to be on par to me. Unconditional love is not something the ego can offer. Only the true self can actually give that, and it is a gift. And this might, now that I'm reminded of part 2 of Dina's question, which was something like how things might be if we did not have egos, and unconditional love would just be the thing. It would be, look at all this beautiful diversity. I am okay with it. I'm one with it. We're all in the same space. Let's just be. No need to put confinements or boundaries or controls on it whatsoever. A sort of heaven on earth, which we can replicate or produce one person at a time. I can't make you do it, but I can help myself do it. And perhaps, hopefully, that becomes contagious in some kind of way. So we want to be contagious in some way to the friend who is at home in the ego suit, unconditional love. Good
Will
questions.
share.
Wow. Yeah, please.
I will share my perspective on ego as we are all just conversing about it. So I am a unique individual snowflake. I am a point of consciousness. I love me, and you are points of consciousness and unique individual snowflakes that are worthy of love. And that's where my ego with a small e resides and knows that I love myself enough to buckle up every time I get in my car because I deserve to be safe, and you all do too. But when we step into the attachment of I am better than, that's when it becomes an ego with a big E. My very old wise grandmother taught me a lesson about the ego without ever once even understanding the concept of the ego. When I was little, she said, "Nobody is better than you, and you are not better than anybody else." And to live by that helps me live in the ego with a little e, where I can love me. And we should all love we. And I'm not going to treat anybody as though they're better than me, or tolerate anybody treating me as though they're. Yeah, I think
they
I got
are
it
better
backwards,
than
but
you.
you got it.
You said it, yeah.
So yeah, that's just my perspective on ego with a little e versus a big E. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Good.
Being very vocal this time. Do you believe that feeding each other's egos in any way can be a positive thing? So, for example, in the context of affirmation, if you are affirming someone's, that what they just did is good, is that not feeding part of their ego? Because their true self won't need that affirmation. Maybe? What are your thoughts?
Wow. That's another really thin line, I feel like. I think that the concern should not be what their ego is up to in the moment that you could offer praise of some sort. Okay, so if I'm wondering, I just have to be careful that my ego is not the one wondering how their ego is going to feel. If I have genuine, heartfelt praise or unconditional love to express, then it is my natural expression to do that.
So the intention behind it is what matters.
Yes, their ego may well be very wrapped up in it, but that's not my job to.
You're not trying to control or manipulate. You're
Exactly.
just expressing.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like wholehearted encouragement.
Wholehearted encouragement. That's it. We never do know how the other person's going to receive what we're saying, but we might think we do, and that goes back to things we already discussed, right? If I want to, again, bring heaven to earth, so to speak, it just has to begin with me. I have to make sure that I'm being the best version of myself that I can and expressing the highest version of myself that I can. And as long as that's the case and I'm doing it to the best of my ability in that moment, then that's all I'm responsible for. Mm-hmm.
This is just a comment on what you just said, that when you live in the land of ego, that it opens you up to the possibility of being manipulated by someone who is understanding where your ego is coming from and can be worked. I think that's what I heard when you said that. That's what came into this book.
So the next time you have to come to the microphone next time, because that was also really good and I can't even begin to reiterate it. So you have something, Mark?
Well, ego is defined as things maybe being vocally said or physically embodied. This could be either.
I think I heard you say the ego. Oh gosh, I'm
Can be vocally vocally said.
can
or,
be vocally said or physically embodied. Yes.
Yeah, and I was thinking, athletes they have their ego, but then they retire. Maybe past the ego, maybe, but more of a physical embodiment of somebody else, a coach. But maybe not necessarily verbally talking so much. Maybe what I said is assessed as yes or
I'm sorry. First of all, I'm having a hard time understanding just because of the mask, I think. So I'm not totally sure I caught that.
no. Okay.
I think you were using athletic example,
Yeah, like,
right? So
Yeah, like
athletes
the-
retire,
well, I was just saying maybe there's a yes or no, like, yeah, people maybe have an ego they do well, then they kind of, they don't really embody the ego if they retire, but they pass it on to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, I was just saying maybe I'm just open to yes or no,
Mhm.
what your agreement is, but
Yeah.
maybe it could be physical more than just talking.
Right. Right.
I'm just kind of saying.
Yeah, I think so. And that's interesting. And also that opens up a lot of thoughts in my mind actually about how we carry it in our bodies and how it can pass from one to another, or especially if someone has a certain view of you. And I mean, you might see sons do it with their fathers, for example. It's like, oh, dad used to carry this mantle, and now it's my turn to take the mantle, and you know, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
I think, is it Sandy? Are you Sandy?
Kim.
Could you or Lance explain a little more about the little E and the big E?
Have you heard of that before?
Would you like to,
I can take a
if
stab.
if you don't mind,
I don't mind.
the big E versus little E?
So,
So I can
just as a, I first learned about the concept when I studied Buddhism, because we are all in that philosophy. It's like we can be diverse, but there is the very basic concept of each one of us doesn't want to experience suffering, so we are all the same. And in that regard, I'm not better than you, you're not better than me, but we as individuals have a programmed survival instinct, and that's the little E. That's the I want to survive. I want to do well. We're not in that fight or flight, hunter-gatherer age. So now it's more of a social survival that we step into. If we can step into it with a more wholehearted, I walk into my social situations with more of a loving intent. And so I work to not bring that big E, ego that says I'm better than you, because we do have that human instinct as well to look at and compare ourselves to any situation. This is my personal belief, within each one of us we have the potential for good, the potential for bad, and that's the distinction between which ego do I pick up, the little E or the big E. And I always go back to what my grandmother told me. Nobody's better than me. I'm not better than anybody else. And that's the little E. So feel free to add on whatever you'd like to.
Sure. Thank you for that. Yeah. Is that
Yes, thank
a
you.
little more clear? Yeah, I like the way you described that. I also speak in terms of big I and little I. So it's kind of the same idea. It's kind of the same idea. Here's where I think it's a little different is when I think of big I, I'm thinking of the one consciousness. And that as I look around at each one of you, I'm seeing you as individual, individual assimilations of the one I. And it's amazingly diverse. It's amazingly creative. And it moves me on the inside to hold that perspective, because suddenly I'm just filled with the best intentions for every person here. It's very deep, warm, touchingness. The little I is what I want to say. I want to summarize the little I as what's on my identification card. You'll have my name, my address. You'll have any plaque or certification or degree or lineage, heritage, like all the things I attach myself to, and the way the world labels me as a black man, like all of this is little I stuff. That's not who I am. It's just the label, right? It's the way we use these terms and these concepts that we come up with to say, this is the person. And that's fine. That is a person. But even that personhood comes out of something that's much greater. The big I. The true I am. It is the I am that exists in every one of you. It's the reason why you woke up this morning and started choosing to do all the things you chose to do. It's because you are, and therefore hold the birthright of saying, I am. Every living thing shares that same awareness, that same consciousness. Mm-hmm.
Lance, how do you identify and describe yourself outside of the lie?
Oh man, God, this group today. Whoa. So the question is, how do I, actually he said Lance, so I'm going to get really specific. How does Lance describe himself outside of the little I? Is that it? Okay, so Lance, the person, has to choose to peel off the layers and the baggage and the labels and all these things that are placed upon him and things that he has placed upon himself. Okay. I am that from which you and I, he and she, it and they, light and dark, emerges from. I am that in this physical form. I think that's my answer. I think that's Lance's answer. You have something else?
Well, the extension of that
Come up here, please.
I'm smiling because the extension of that is in everyone. Every one of us has that. It's in all of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was a complicated sentence to try to put together. I almost lost myself in it. I guess it would have been easier to just say all that diversity. The thing from which all the diversity comes, I am that. We are that. You are that. It's okay. So Lance, is an athlete. He's an Olympic weightlifter. He's a musician. He plays a variety of instruments. He's a vocalist. He's a writer. He does a podcast. He apparently likes to talk in front of people. Lance grew up in Texas, and I mean, what else? Lance has a long list of personal traumas and dramas that he's been through, that on any given day he could choose to use as some card to play, as, you know, some excuse to get by, or to manipulate a situation. But all of that is the conditioning, maybe like the program that Lance can operate in, and is how he might choose to navigate this world. Or he might choose to just remove all of that stuff, because with it has come a lot of pain, a lot of baggage, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. The ego is so involved in all of those things about Lance. It's a lot to carry all of those things around, and I'm feeling more and more comfortable just letting it go. And if I didn't have a reason to tell you any of those things on a certain given day in a moment, I just wouldn't say anything about them. Then the problem for Lance becomes the labels and concepts that our culture has so conditioned all of us with, that now I'm concerned that you are putting that label on me. So I might be able to let it go within myself, but can I let it go that you may still hold it? So that becomes the next thing, and I just have to show up with some level of courage to just go, you know, I don't have control over what that person thinks or feels, or
That's the real battle.
that's the real battle. As we try to move forward in our lives with whatever we're doing, there are always people involved. Oh, I was saying that the diversity is beautiful, and that points to love being at the core of it all. And that's the most important thing, you know. That's the core of it all. Meaning, when I say this thing about I am that, if love is the core of it all, then love is the thing that's going on here. I am that. You are that. And so if I can shed the layers and let the love just be as it is, taking off the layers, at the core is the love, then the fears, they melt away. And I definitely am less concerned with what the other person's thinking at that point, when I'm just being who I am. Not the person, who I am, the reality, the core existence, right? It's a lovely play on words. It's everywhere all the time. I am. It's everywhere all the time. The next time you're talking and you start saying I, immediately make the connection, and immediately ask yourself, who is this I that is speaking? Is it the little I, or is it the big I? And how do I change my language so that I'm beginning to differentiate? And I'm becoming really good at it, I think, for myself. As I'm talking to myself, right? The stories begin to play, and I'm washing dishes, but there's some story in my head. There's an I going on, right? Or as I'm writing, I may write I. And I ask myself, who's speaking? Who am I speaking about when I say I? If I'm talking about the little I, the little version of me, the ego version of me, what do I specifically want to say about that egoic person? And just letting it be as it is, and also owning it as it is. It's okay, right? I don't even fight the ego, because if I'm aware of ego, that means I'm greater than it, right? Does that make sense? So there's no fight there. There's no war there. So why am I fighting the other person when they are in an egoic state? I've just made another illusion when I start to have this friction with other people, right? I just need to recognize who I am, and then the ego has no power. Even ego in the other person has no power. When the group comes together to make a decision, and all those egos begin to flare up, especially my own though, I need to recognize that ego really has no power. But as long as I play into the game that ego plays, I feed it. I feed the ego by participating at that level. Any other thoughts? Questions? I just want to talk a little bit more about the I am and what that sense is like. The I am is simple presence. Simple presence. Here, right now, always, all the time. So simple. Not complicated. It is not up or down. It is not left or right. It is not black or white. It is not good or bad. It is not the universe, nor is it not the universe. It is simply one. And you can experience that whenever you choose to, because it is your birthright. You are born with I amness. When you open your eyes, you see this three-dimensional world and all of the data and information that it reminds you of, but you are before that. You are before that. I am is before that. It is the greatest. It is the oldest. It is the thing that was there before the beginning, as we might think of it, and will be there after the end as a time and space that we can conceive. I am is there always, or else nothing could be. We couldn't have this conversation right now if that were not the case. And so you can visit that place, right? It is just pure existence. And it's just as simple as closing the eyes, if you choose to, connecting to your breath, which just means being aware of how you breathe. It gives you something simple to focus on that is also life-supporting breath, right? You focus on life support, which is your breath, and watch the thoughts come and go. They come in, let them walk right back out. You don't have to engage in the thought just because it appears. The engagement or the over-involvement is a form of attachment. So the ego gets you when you attach to thought. You can just let the thought exist. Like the sound of the airplane flying over, it comes and it goes. I'm not concerned with who's in the plane, where it came from, what the ID number is on it. That's attachment. Let the thought come and go. And just accept that it's there for the moment, and then it will leave. And you'll go, oh, I'm still here. That is that pure awareness that everything has to come by. It cannot exist without your very pure awareness. You are very powerful in this sense. I have to say that again. You are very powerful in this sense that everything must come by you. Whoa. The thing is we've been conditioned to think that things are happening to us. That's not exactly it. It's more like just a little check-in that you get to observe something diverse just for that moment. And even what appears to be obstacle and pain is the opportunity for more self-awareness. That doesn't mean the experience is easy or that it always feels good. It just means it's not the end of you. I am at the tail end of finishing a manual called The Identity Process that helps individuals answer the question, who am I and what am I here to do? I've been working on it for almost 2 years. Closer to 3, almost 3 years. So I hope to have that done soon, so then I can make a workshop or a seminar available, and even a retreat available where we just totally clear space so you can get to the bottom of that. Who am I? What am I here to do? And then how that would therefore affect your friends and your family and your workplace and everyone else. And if there's nothing else, anything else, thoughts, questions, concerns, any thoughts or questions at all, do not fear. Don't be afraid to just, if something doesn't make sense, or if you know the ego's nagging you about something, this is a good space and place to confront that, because you are the king or the queen of your territory, your domain. That is your life, your self-existence. You are the king or queen of that. Ego is like an enchanter, a whisperer, causing spells, making problems, always sneaking around in your business where it doesn't need to be. And you can learn to take control of the ego. And I can help with that, definitely. If you do not address the matters of the ego will not leave you alone. It will not. Things that happen to us at a young age and we carry certain trauma from, and the ego, okay, I have to tell you this. The ego is portrayed as in the ancient Hebrew language, the ego is portrayed as a serpent, and it winds around the individual, making you entangled or knotted or self-involved. This is the nature of the ego. So all of these negative experiences we have that we ignore, if you ignore it, you're entangled by it. If you avoid it, you're entangled by it. If you're afraid to talk about it, you're entangled by it, which means you're carrying the thing around that you're trying to not deal with, but it's on your back all the time. It affects the way you show up in a space. the way you see the world, the way you interpret everything that's happening. Now that lens is there. It really messes up relationships in some unpredictable ways. So again, all of this is just to shine a light or expose the ego so that it can't do its deceptive, manipulative stuff that it does. Okay, no problems here. Everybody's good. All right. Okay, well, you can find me at lancehoward.net. I'm also on social media. So if you need to talk or want to talk, just connect with this person, Lance. Ego off the table. You can totally do that. I'm available. Thank you for showing up today. All right.